Hi guys, Coach Mike here. Welcome back to the channel. You blink an eye and it's July. What the heck happened to the trading year? Yeah, I don't know if it's just me or everyone, but when you become a trader, time flies. It just goes faster. I don't know if it's because of options, expirations, futures, rollovers, or maybe it's just we enjoy what we do and that makes the time go faster. But we're already at the halfway point, and it's a good time to take a step back and ask yourself, how you doing? Right? And not necessarily about P&L. That's one of the factors, but let's look at some of the other things in your development as a trader that you can take a look at now and assess and be prepared for the rest of the year to see if you're hitting the goals that you've already put in place in January. Let's take a look. Okay, the elephant in the room, results. How are you doing in regards to your results? Not necessarily the number or the percentage, but how are they in relationship to where your goals were back in January? Remember, this is the midway point, so you can kind of just divide by 2 and kind of get a feel for where you're going, right? So the results is an important KPI in a sense, and it's ultimately why we're here. But how did you get there? Did you add more size? Did you put on more risk? Maybe you're hitting your goals, but you put on a lot, more risk and you increase your risk of ruin. That's probably not a good thing or a sustainable thing for the future. So something to consider. So it's important to take a deep dive into those results. How did you get them? Did you follow your plan accordingly and just chip away at profits with a nice smooth equity curve? Or did you just get lucky on, say, GameStop back in April or May? Look at that. It's really important. The other thing to consider is we've been in a pretty big bull market. I mean, tech, particularly in these semiconductors. If you're super long, well, every trader looks like a genius if you're long in a bull market. Assess that and say, was there a luck factor here? My results too, also, there was padded a little bit because I was slightly long and the market's accommodated. That won't always be the case. So take a look and say, great, enjoy it, embrace it. And if you're struggling, maybe you were too short in a market that was pretty much screaming long. Assess that and make any adjustments that you need to make in the second half of the year. And lastly, when it comes to results, where were they coming from? Was it a particular strategy or a particular market? Right? Maybe your Forex pairs were just kind of stalled with the low volatility, but your tech, rip-roaring. Take a look at that. Where was your compliance too? Maybe you had better compliance in certain types of strategies, or you're able to identify trades easier, which will help you in the long run, regardless of market direction. Take a look at that and make note to see, is that something you need to implement in the next half of the year? Okay, next, a very important phase of your analysis so far year to date. Where are you improving as a trader? Right? Are you learning about different techniques? Are you getting involved in communities and having accountability, trading partners, things like that? Are you getting exposed to other markets, even if they may not interest you? Is it something that maybe you want to explore? I really encourage everyone to look at different markets, get comfortable, and some of them you're just going to write off. And at minimum, maybe you'll be able to have a good conversation at a traders expo with a trader who's like trading wheat or gold or something you're never going to get into. But exploring and expanding your boundaries is really important in trader development. And your development plan should have parameters to see how you're doing. This is one of those areas where we kind of put in the beginning of the year, we want to learn more about this or learn more about that, and it kind of falls off the wayside. Dust off those development plans and take a look. Are you developing as a trader equally as much as you're improving in your process? Okay, you got the strategy. You know when to enter, you know when to exit, and you're nailing it. But maybe expand your development into learning more about the areas of market context. What drives certain markets to do certain things? When should you fade opportunities? How about those FOMC announcements where the market rips and then gives it all back later in the afternoon? Is that a trend that's consistent? Maybe there's opportunities there. Hint, hint, there are. So take advantage of that, but make that part of your development. Don't just worry about entering at the 30 moving average. getting a bigger picture of market context is a key to success, and putting that in your development is a very important component to that success. One of the things I've identified in my development plan was last year I was, for the most part, delta neutral, meaning for every long trade I had on, there was a short to sort of balance it out. And it really suffered my performance in a sense that it could have been a lot better because we were in a long bull market. And it took me a while to adapt to that, and I didn't want to be late to the party. This year, I got on board, and I was kind of heavy leaning long for the first 4 or 5 months anyway. So the results showed that. But does that make me a better trader? Actually, it probably put my portfolio more at risk. Granted, I may have gotten lucky or just the market accommodated, but I want to be aware of that in my development, saying, when do I need to get more delta neutral or just execute my plan based on certain parameters rather than having the market back me up and support my winning ways. Next, how well did you do in identifying areas that you need to improve in? We talk a lot about in our group the SWOT assessment, which is really assessing your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And we'll have a link somewhere above or below so you can take a look at that video. But really looking at your strengths. How did you improve on the things that you said you were strong in? And the weaknesses, how did you do in sort of eliminating or kind of curtailing those weaknesses? In sports management and peak performance management, the golden rule is to really improve your strengths rather than your weaknesses. So I'm going to adhere to that, but there's certain weaknesses such as FOMO and discipline that we need to kind of address in trading. So you want to make sure that's being taken care of. And in regards to the threats, what were the things that you did in the first half of the year to help manage or alleviate some of those threats? Is it you only have so much money to go before you have to go back to the job? Is your spouse or partner saying, hey, go back to get a real job, things like that? How are they being managed? How are they being addressed? Did you manage them? Because they're probably not going to go away. So now's the time to take an assessment. And if you didn't, now's the time to put some actions to those areas. They're very, very important in the growth as a trader. And by putting those aside, you're just waiting for a ticking time bomb to pretty much get you out of the business. And obviously we don't want to do that, hence the reason for a development plan. Okay, and lastly, what I do in my development plan, I'm guilty as everyone else, is what were the areas where I cut some corners? Maybe it was that daily report card that I only did maybe weekly, or I was a little late on the monthly one, and maybe I just didn't do all my KPIs. I just, checked win-loss or something, and that's good enough for me, or I'm crushing it. My results are saying I did really well, so I can cut back on a lot of these other things. These are all areas where now is the time to take stock and to readdress them and say, you know what, I have to stop cutting corners. So one thing really important, identify where you're sort of cutting corners. And we see this a lot when in bull markets where everyone's, crushing it. They tend to cut corners. You're going to be a professional trader, or maybe you are already. Let's not start that habit early. Let's stop cutting corners. And lastly, it's been a pretty wild year as far as the markets are concerned. And that doesn't seem to be changing. We have Federal Open Market Committee, interest rate decisions all over the place. We have U.S. geopolitical elections later this year. A lot of things that are going to happen. How is that going to modify, if anything, and change your style of trading? Maybe I'll be watching the VIX a little more, especially when it comes to November with those U.S. elections. How can I take advantage of that volatility? Maybe I'm going to hold runners more because of the volatility. I don't know. We'll see how it plays out, but I'm going to be listening to the markets to give me direction rather than just trade my sort of canned setups. That's in my development plan, and I'm going to monitor how I do that and how well I do that. It's really important, so it's going to either result in a decent year or maybe a very, very good year. And hopefully I don't screw it up to make sure that it stays, one that I'm going to remember for a very long time. So keep that in mind in your development. It's not just about improving. It's about what are the adjustments that I'm thinking about making that's going to impact my results for the second half of the year. So I know that's a lot to chew on, But what I did was I put a sample development plan in the link below. Just click it on and you'll get a free sample and you can get a look and see, hey, maybe there's something I can incorporate into my plan and maybe it doesn't apply to you. That's fine too. But they'll give you a lot of good ideas. We use it a lot for our members and hopefully it will benefit you as well. Thanks again and great trading for the second half of 24.